Hi, Oxygen community. Okay, we are back with section 2 of our three-part series. If you watched section 1, I told you all about how you all were so excited to see our EOS implementer, Michele Mollard, join us in our Women in Business series. So we brought her back for all of her wonderful ideas and information. And she is joining me to talk about the peaks and valleys of running businesses that maybe aren't that direct line to success, but a little bit of up and down and what to do. So this is section 2, and we are going to talk about what to do if you are in a point in your business where it's really just survival. And I think we've all kind of been in a point over the last couple of years that we've had to make some tough decisions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Michele, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back again.
Okay. All right. So I know that this section that we're going to talk about today is going to be a ton of information in 15 minutes. And Michele and I both love this topic so much. So if you are just listening, you're probably going to want to listen twice. And if you're taking notes, get ready. So Michele and I have a fondness for this stuff. So I think that we agree on all the bases that if your business is in a place of, okay, we need to be in survival mode, whether it's the economy or maybe just things have gotten rough, or, the reality is maybe you just made some bad decisions. The most important part of survival is to know your numbers.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I would yes and this. So if anybody listened to the first conversation, yes, and it's just sheer survival anyway, right? And so how do we make sure it's not always in a crisis mode? You will hit a ceiling always, right? So if you're at that, you're trying to make your first million, you're trying to get to 3 million, you're trying to get to 10 million. It's all what you said, Kat, but it's also just all of those things in there. And so you and I talked about knowing your numbers. That's not just in an urgent manner, or like an urgent manner or time frame. It is, you better be a little bit tenacious about knowing your numbers.
Yeah, I think that people who run businesses, I always tell people, there's a lot of companies that make money in spite of themselves. There's actually a lot of companies out there who don't know all of their numbers or don't have a firm grasp on them. So one of the things that I think is a misconception is when it comes to working with a coach, they think, oh, well, if I'm in survival mode, that's one of the things that has got to go. But in reality, a coach is someone who has actually seen this a lot of times. So we do work. And by the way, this is not a sales pitch by any means, but actually a survival tactic to get through these types of things. Coaches watch companies not only get through it, but then survive and thrive afterwards. So it's really kind of getting in there, determining what you need to survive, what is excess, and then where are your gaps? Where are you, my dad would lovingly say, tripping over a dime to pick up a penny?
Mm-hmm. Nope, absolutely, for sure. And I think that's right. I mean, I think I'm an athlete, so I'm sorry for this analogy that might miss some people, but I think you can get to it. So Tiger Woods, right? One of the best golfers, arguably the best golfers around. When his swing is off, he doesn't just keep swinging wrong. He leans into his coach and says, what am I doing wrong? And he's like, hey, your hips are coming through too fast. Somebody like that has been doing it for that long. Literally, he probably could do his golf swing in his sleep. Yet he leans into a coach when something's not right. And so to your first point, Kat, that's really what it is. And again, not a sales pitch. I don't care who your coach is. And I'm using air quotes because I'm not sure if we're on TV or not. But so like, it's leaning in to recognize that is the way it is. And you need to find those. And again, it could be your best friend. It could be another leader. It could be somebody in Vistage or EO or a roundtable or a mastermind. I mean, go find them. I mean, obviously Kat and I are here, but go find them. I guess that's my first plea.
Yeah, like when we've got our Lean Six groups together, one of the things that we're talking about is leaning a company out, right? We're removing waste. We're improving process. Some of those things people often say to me is, oh, well, we're not in manufacturing, or we're not in, and granted, if you're in R&D, we're not trying to lean you out. We're coming up with waste, right? There's certain places where when we come in and we actually use a Lean Six process, we're not applicable. That's 100% another type of process that we need to come in and use. But there are times, especially when you are struggling, that you want processes. But again, I need you to know your numbers. If Michele comes in and starts working with your company, you still have to know your base. You have to know what is needed for you to survive, so that we have a baseline to get you through.
For sure. Yeah, it's kind of, if someone will follow me along in this kind of visual, right? So I always say to my leadership teams, if you were to leave for a month from your business and go onto an island, and sorry if this offends anybody, a cabana boy or a cabana girl brings you your scorecard, right? That's what we call it, your measurables from a leadership team, right? So operations, sales, maybe marketing, HR, IT, right? So those big numbers, I should be able to say, I need to call the office and I know exactly who to call, or I don't need to call the office and everything is good. Right. And it's, I really want that image in your heads. It's hard because we're in the day to day. And so we know it. But if you were literally off on an island somewhere, you have one phone call, what are you going to do and how are you going to fix it? And if you don't know that, and if you aren't tracking it, there's no way. And then I will add on there, who is accountable? So know the numbers, know what you're seeing. So leading indicators, right? P&Ls are good, right? They're still lagging indicators and we still need them. But how do we predict better, short-term and long-term? And that is in our measurables, right? So if I'm, as a salesperson, supposed to make 15 calls a day and there's 3 of me, 3 different people, and we're only making 10, the predictor is sales are going to be off. The predictor is cash flow might be off. The predictor is operations might be slow, and I need to slow people down, right? So all of this stuff about numbers is not just knowing that Michele's not doing her job, right? People. But what does that do to the rest of the organization? And then how do we pivot? How do we get ahead of it? How do we look at those things as we go forward to go to operations and say, okay, guys, we're slow on orders and this is what's going to happen, right? So have a plan for what could come over the number that you're off.
Yeah, I love that. We talked a little bit and quick in the first segment about people problem, process problem, management problem. And these are all very broad concepts that we bring, and each one of us has a different combination of them. Michele and I share the leading indicators, lagging indicators, and the scorecard piece. We build functional scorecards here. So it's really not a whole lot of thought process about them. You just kind of input your data and they happen for you, which is the beautiful thing. But there becomes a point where if you really are struggling and you are in this survival mode, we can literally come to you and say, hey, listen, you're emotionally attached to this. I'm not, right? This is your baby, not mine. So let's take a look at it. Is it the people working for you? Is it the management that's overseeing them and not helping your cause? Is it the processes that maybe you just weren't agile enough to keep up with, right? Like, we've been through a global pandemic. We got some crazy banking situations going on. We won't even open the Pandora's box of politics and what that looks like, past, present, future, whatever your beliefs are. It affects your business, supply chain. By the way, it's across the board, across the industry. So no one is immune to it. And so I think you have to, if you aren't struggling right now, what are you doing to prevent this? B, if you're struggling right now, how do you kind of throw the something in the wheel to stop it and say, okay, which one of these can I start with? And who's going to help me? You said a few minutes ago, maybe it's your best friend. I would maybe say maybe not your best friend.
I know. I would agree.
They kind of get supportive. And by the way, they're supposed to be your tribe, right? Like, they're supposed to get on your crew. But who's going to help you? I loved when you said somebody that's done this before you. Is it your mentor, or is it your, somebody that has further down your path? That's a little bit more my. but who is it? And what is that going to do to help you? And, if you're treading water or borderline taking on water,
right?
How do we help you decide if it's time to cut bait and try again, or how do we help you fix it?
Yeah. And I think the thing that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. So when our scorecard is not working or our measurables aren't working, look at those too, right? So if something's off, then how do I fix it, right? And so if that number is off, let's back up the train and go, where did it break down, right? So 15 calls a day, where does it break down? And then we can look at that whole thing, and right? And so knowing those numbers is just vital, because you can, here's my soapbox. You hit it too. There is no emotion in data. It's data. Like it's Star Trek, right? I mean, it's data.
Yeah. Here's the thing about data, and I love this. I heard this recently. And again, like if you're sucked into my Lean Six process, and you know how I feel about data. If you're not in my Lean Six, then you don't see me on that soapbox quite that often. Data is amazing if you read it right, and if you're looking at the right stuff.
Correct.
Like if you're not a salesperson in Michelle's example, and you're trying to assess productivity on the machine floor, then those 15 calls don't apply to you, right? So make sure, again, and that's probably a management problem. So ding, 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 process management, which problem is it for you? It's not the people. It's not the process. That's a management issue. You're looking at the wrong data.
Correct.
So too much information can be a bad thing.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, definitely. So I know actually, Kat, and I love it that we disagree a little bit on this. For EOS, it's 5 to 15 numbers at the leadership team level. That's all you need to look at, right? So if everything's important, nothing's important. And so 5 to 15 things. So if you're sitting here listening to Kat and I, and you have 27, 30 numbers on the leadership team, I'll caveat this for one thing, then you don't have the right numbers. What rolls up? So think about it like accounting 101, expenses and income, right? And then you have a whole lot of different things under expenses, right? It breaks down smaller. I want you guys to really elevate that and say, what I need on my island as a leadership team? And the reason why leaders and leadership teams have 37 things is they have not allocated measurables to other people in the organization. So every person in your organization must have a measurable. They must own it. And it's not far-fetched for sales to get a number. That is normal, right? But what is our HR person doing? What is the measurable and the numbers that they're accountable for? And it's not happy employees. That's impossible to rate. Well, all right, I just pissed off some HR people. It's not impossible to rate. Sorry. But right, we're talking about numbers. So I get it, right? But if it is, then how do you measure that? Make sure you can measure that, right? Make sure it's scientifically proven, right? The Q12, you can measure that, right? Same thing with IT. What are you measuring? Is it the amount of computers that you're fixing, or the amount of progress that you're moving, like ERPs, or right? And so what are we doing? And so that's why I truly, truly believe wholeheartedly that the reason why leadership teams have 37 is that we don't trust our employees to own a number and own it, literally own it to get across the line. And so then, did we not train them? Did we not measure them? Did we not manage them well? What is the problem? That's another whole other podcast that we can go, right? But that is my little bit of my soapbox is you got to have.
Interestingly enough, if you're using scorecarding, which I know Michelle and I both are advocates of, there are not 37 lines on a scorecard. There are like 4, maybe, preferably.
So you're
3.
even, there you go.
Yeah.
So you're even tighter than I am.
Right. So again, if you are in survival mode, or you feel like you wanna future proof for survival mode, or you're feeling that tension, okay? Because by the way, if you're feeling it, your staff is feeling it.
Oh yeah.
If you're lacking motivation, your staff is you're lacking motivation, as goes the leader, so goes the team. Then some of these tools, by the way, not all of them, because if you listen to this whole thing and you're treading water, you're totally overwhelmed again. Some of these are what you can implement to figure out how to get out of it. It's a plan. It's a course of action. And by the way, that business of yours is your baby, not ours. So, or a coach that you can use. Yeah. But again, as my dad would tell you, don't trip over a dime to pick up a penny. Make sure that the resources that you're implementing are the right ones.
Right. And I would think that too, if you kind of hit the nail on the head and it sparked a thought, is if you are truly in survival mode, I would say those numbers need to be weekly numbers. So we haven't really talked about the timing of those. Ours are always weekly number. In our world, it's always weekly measurables, not monthly measurables, because a month is too long, right? And so you have to be short-term predictors. And so if you're thinking about it, we always run a weekly, but if you are really, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, tighten that down real hard and get to those weekly numbers. What are the weekly activities to fix a problem? What are the weekly activities to identify the problem? And then we can go fix it, whatever it is. So I know we didn't talk about timing on that. And some people say, oh, I just look at it, my P&L once a month.
Yeah, so I will completely second that. When you work with our coaching staff on an accountability standpoint, we check in weekly. I will add to that, daily is too often.
Yep.
You will panic.
Yep.
And so daily is too often. And if you feel you need to look daily, then you're just biting off your nose, because there's a lot of influx. There's a lot of different pieces that come into account, and you will probably do more damage than that. But weekly is a good place to start.
And I think paralysis by analysis, right? To some extent, if you're on that daily basis, you're just going to get so much like, I need to prepare to do that. No, you just need to do that. You need to go, right? And so if you're looking at it daily, you're doing a lot of prep work, you're doing a lot of behind the scenes. Sometimes you just need to go. And so I think that's a nice, not compromise, it's not the word I want, but a nice balance between monthly and then daily and then weekly being in the middle. I think it's a really great balance, something that we subscribe to at EOS for sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, Michele, once again, 15 minutes and we just pumped people full of information. So if you hit any of those crazy words or any of that makes you feel more comfortable or like you're ready to act, then let's tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, Michele Mollard at EOS Worldwide. I'll spell that for you. So Michele is with one L and then .MOLLARD. At EOS Worldwide. And I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So find Michele Mollard out there. It is pretty simple. It is my name. If you find it's a gentleman, then it's not me. There is one other person that's a gentleman in France that has my name. That is not me. Come find me.
Awesome. I love that so much. All right. You can find us on YouTube at Oxygen Coaching, or you can send a request at info@oxygencoachinggroup.com. And this is a 3-part series. So you can catch the one right before this, which is It You? And then we'll be back for a 3rd segment about getting your business to flourish. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time.